Hello and welcome to the latest Blood Red podcast. I am Stephen Killen. I am joined by Paul Gorst and Theo Squires. But before we get into the nitty gritty, I'd like to thank our sponsors, NordVPN. And to get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/bloodred. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan, and there's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the podcast episode description if you're on YouTube. And with that out the way, let's talk all things Liverpool. So this weekend we've obviously had a lot of international football, and Trent Alexander-Arnold's probably starred in it now, getting all the backlash off his back. Paul, we'll start with you. Obviously, winning penalty, stepped up, charted the second most powerful goal at the European Championships.
Is that right? Yeah.
Apparently so. And for a player like Trent, who's obviously polarising for anyone outside Liverpool, it's a boost for him, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think his status is going to change massively within the England setup on the back of one penalty. But what it did show was basically what we've already known as people who cover Liverpool in the city for many years. This lad's the real deal and has got the mentality to step up and do the business, hasn't he? It was a brilliant pen. I thought they all were, to be fair. Fair play to them all who stepped up. Saka, Cole Palmer, and Trent. Just dispatched it like it was nothing, didn't he? Like he was playing in Sefton Park or, wave 3 goals or whatever, just no nonsense. And, it was, by the end of it, I was wondering, didn't even know where he was meant to be playing. I barely seen him sneak on the pitch with a few minutes of extra time left. And when they were talking about doing the whole wing-back system and Southgate's changing it around and all that stuff, it felt like it was tailor-made for Trent to play on the right, and then nothing really seemed to change, did it, with the England team? It was just basically Ezri Konsa come in, didn't he? And who was it who got taken out? I'm not even sure who.
The suspended Mark Gay.
Yeah.
So Saka was a bit deeper, so Foden could go central.
But Saka was still on the right, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And there wasn't a whole lot to change, considering they were talking of these big, huge changes. But yeah, I mean, I said on last week's pod that Switzerland was probably going to win, and England still flattering to deceive at the performances. One penalty shootout win doesn't completely change the way they should be looked at. I think they've been really poor all throughout the tournament. 5 middling performances in a row now. They've got the Dutch, haven't they, on Wednesday night. Obviously, Cody Gakpo and Virgil van Dijk will be starting in that one. Ryan Gravenberch on the bench. So maybe England will finally come a cropper when they play someone who have actually been decent this tournament. But from Trent's perspective, I thought he took his penalties superbly, and fair play to him, because that was a pressure penalty. And let's face it, there would have been the pitchforks were getting sharpened, weren't they, when he stepped up to take it, for people who don't particularly rate him for whatever reason outside of the Liverpool bubble, which we've spoken about for years now, and I still can't get my head around. But he took it really well, and good on him.
Theo, obviously being our England man yourself, penny for the thoughts of Joe Gomez, obviously, when Gay gets suspended, and then even in the game, I think someone gets brought off, and then Konsa goes to left back, and he's not played left back in the whole season. You've got Gomez has proved his versatility in that department, and then fast forward to Saturday when you've got Kieran Trippier playing left wing back and Bukayo Saka playing right wing back. What must be going through his head after having such a good tournament, or good season, for Liverpool, and then brings himself back into the contention, and then he's just left on the bench?
Well, Southgate's always had his favourites. If you look at the tournament history, he very rarely changes his 11. He sticks to this smaller group within his overall squad, and it just so happens that Gomez is on the outside of that looking in. He had a bit of game time, didn't he, in the friendlies before the tournament, but the writing was on the wall for him that he wasn't going to come in and be first choice, because I think Konsa started one of the games and he was brought in ahead of him as a substitute in another one of the friendlies. That is the player that Southgate favours as the go-to. On one hand, it's really harsh on him. He had a really good spell of the season playing left back. That is not his natural position, but it's more natural for him than so many of the other players in this squad. But on the other hand, you can see maybe why he favours Konsa, because he was virtually never present for Aston Villa, wasn't he? He's got that form, and Southgate does. He's a bit hypocritical at times, but he does like to stick to players who have played a lot of football or are in form. we all have our own opinions whether Luke Shaw should be in that squad or not. He did well when he came on, but it was his first appearance since February, and he's traditionally a player that takes his time to get back to his best after an injury. The fact that you're only seeing now for glimpses in a quarter final, it doesn't seem quite right that Gomez hasn't had a look in, but he's not going to look in now up to the quarterfinals. He's not going to realistically for the rest of the tournament. But there isn't. Apart from Trippier, most of the defence have done pretty well so far throughout this tournament. Like Mark Gay's had a great tournament. Stones has been a bit up and down, but
I don't think Kyle Walker has. Every time I've seen him, he seems to be getting taken apart by...
He was at fault for the Slovakia goal, wasn't he? He played him on side.
Yeah, there was a few times I've seen him, and he's obviously... People always talk about his recovery pace, but I think a back three probably does suit him the best, doesn't it? But I disagree with that in terms of Walker specifically, but Mark A has been really good, and Stones has done okay, yeah.
So yeah, it's not as though there's glaring errors in that defence and you're really staking a claim for Joe Gomez to come in. Like if there was a really standout left-back option, Gomez probably wouldn't be in this squad, let's be honest, because he's clearly not there as a centre-back. He's there as this utility player, and he's just way down the pecking order for that as well. He ticks a box and fill in the places. But this is a role he's been used to at Liverpool for a number of years as well. Like we saw lots of him last season, he did really well. But the year before, he just didn't really get a sniff for Liverpool, did he? He was struggling for form. So he's just got to not let it knock him too much. Like he's had a number of years out of the England squad together, so to get back into it in the first place is a big step for him. And hopefully, when he goes back to club level with Arne, gets an arm around his shoulder, can go again, carry on the form from last season. And then Trent's probably the one who can be miffed more. I know we just said Saka was on the right, Trippier's on the left. Trippier should not be in that side because he had such a poor season, a poor tournament. But Southgate's favourites. But then Trent is just so good, and he's got all those abilities. And he's actually a really good penalty taker as well. He's third, second choice at Liverpool now, really, when you look at what managers have said in the past, Jurgen Klopp, and when he's stepped up in the penalty shootouts at Liverpool in 3 finals, as one of the first 5, he scored each time as well. He just doesn't faze him. We saw that when he said, he said? His belly didn't drop when he found out. He's just got such a cool head on his shoulders. He deserves more game time. Gomez deserves more game time, but with Southgate in charge, just can't see it happening.
Who do you think he was talking about, Trent, when he was he got video, didn't he, speaking to his brothers after the game?
It's probably one or two, isn't it?
He's trying to, obviously, these players are always hyper aware that the cameras are on them, so he's trying to cover his mouth, but it does certainly look like he says he didn't want to take one.
I reckon it'll be Foden came off just before the end, didn't he? And if not him, maybe Declan Rice, because he's taken a few in his time for like West Ham.
Maybe, yeah.
But
interesting.
Maybe if he's got a little bit of Liverpool mind games in there, if it's Phil Foden, get the Man City doubts out there, early marker for next season.
But it almost felt like when Trent comes on, is it going to be one of them things where I'm a part of the old guard where you bring on a penalty taker and he misses, you go, saves you right, and then you bring a player on with the last 10 minutes to take a pen. I think we've seen it with the last final, didn't we, where he brought on all the players who
like
missed.
Sancho came out, didn't he, and said thanks to Saka, but he's done that for Rashford, he's done that for Sancho. He's certainly come back strongly, hasn't he, from that. But Saka's a great penalty taker. He's just unfortunate that the one he missed was the most high profile one in his career to date.
It sort of reaffirms how important Trent can be, doesn't it? We've seen it in the past few months, especially where he's becoming a bit more marketable. He's putting a lot more pressure on his own shoulders, and he's definitely taking a claim to he is one of the new senior players at Liverpool, isn't he, Paul?
Yeah, and you mentioned marketing there, marketable. I thought it was interesting that Adidas were coming out with as many social posts as they could at full time with him and Bellingham in particular, and it was the phrase, what was it, diamonds?
Pressure creates
diamonds, yeah.
Who posted it first? Was it Trent or Adidas?
I don't know, actually, but they were certainly keen to make it known that he's one of their clients.
Tweet something like across the...
Yeah, and... It's big for them, isn't it? You know, obviously one of the biggest sports brand company in the world, but looking to sort of shine a light on themselves on the back of the success of their high profile clients. You know, we know Trent moved from Under Armour to them last year, didn't he, for a multi-year deal, I believe to be somewhere around about £26 million, I think. So, you know, this sort of shows you that the level that Alexander-Arnold is at in a general sense, and that's why it's always jarred with his career with England, which hasn't really taken off, has it? Still waiting to get that launch pad. And maybe if this is to be Southgate's last international tournament, which you think it will, and a new man comes in with fresh ideas, that might be the chance for Trent to really lift off with his England career. But for now, I guess he's probably going to have to settle for the bit part role that he's currently playing, because Southgate tried him in midfield but give up on it far too quick for me, and then started labeling it an experiment, and he's been a bit hung out to dry, if I'm honest. But that's why I was so delighted to see him stick away that penalty on Saturday night.
Regardless of the manager, there's going to be a fair few international retirements, you'd imagine, after this tournament. Like Walker, Trippier in particular, they're not exactly young, are they? Like well into mid-30s now. It's like, do you go again, or do you go for the next guard? He probably should have gone for the next guard for this one, to be honest, and that's including like calling up a Jared Branthwaite or a Jarrell Quansah over Lewis Dunk. Just focus on your younger players and think a tournament ahead, rather than giving him that last chance to be part of it.
Then he sort of has as well, hasn't he, in a weird way, but he's got rid of Sterling and Rashford and Grealish. I don't think any of them could particularly lay claim to having a brilliant season, but they were three major players of the last Euros, weren't they? And none of them are there this season. And we've got the likes of Eze in there, and like Jared Bowen. Okay, they're not young players, but certainly a bit of a fresh feel to the England setup with those two. So he's sort of gone a little bit of a halfway house, hasn't he?
You mentioned Gorst before about obviously he set up that game on Wednesday against Holland. Obviously, he was an eye on them because of the Liverpool representation. But I think the breakout story has been Gakpo, hasn't it? Where it's sort of he came into the tournament with question marks over his Liverpool, where he stands in the running, and he comes on. Well, he's been almost ever present at that left wing for Ronald Koeman's side, and then now he's not only sort of proved that he isn't one tournament wonder, he's proved to be almost a masterstroke from Liverpool to get a player in like that.
I think it's been a really good tournament for Liverpool's players. You know, and in a weird way, that means maybe not less so with Arne Slot's pre-season schedule. You know, I think we mentioned last week that, you know, if there's one player who we'd like to stay with the international setup for as long as possible, it's Darwin Núñez, and he's going to be playing in the Copa America semi-finals now, isn't he, against Luis Diaz's Colombia.
He's there for foreseeable because they got the third place playoff, so even if they lose, they're there until the very end.
I suppose the same with Alexis McAllister with Argentina. I think they're playing Canada in the other semi-final. And then there's plenty of involvement, you know, in the semi-final stage in the Euros, isn't there? Gakpo, Gravenberch, Van Dijk, Trent, Gomez, Ibu Konate. But Gakpo has been superb, hasn't he, in the Euros? 3 goals, an assist, a very good assist as well for Daniel Marlon against, who was it now? Someone recently,
Romania? Is that right?
Yes, yeah. And unfortunately to get the goal taken off him against Turkey, wasn't he? It probably was an own goal, but he certainly creates that havoc at the back post to force the error, yeah. So he's been brilliant, really, Gakpo, and probably the stand-up player of the Euros for me, from what I've seen.
Not quite Milan Baros territory. He deserves it a bit more, doesn't he?
Yeah. God, 2004. I remember thinking he was going to be absolutely brilliant that season. But yeah, he's been great, and I think there's a big question now for Arne Slot when Gakpo comes back, whenever that's going to be. Not going to be on the tour of the United States now, is he, given that he's going to be playing on Wednesday? He could be a finalist. Get 3 weeks off after the international tournaments. So it'll be in August now that he'll meet up, and then we'll start to see if Slot sees him in the same way that the rest of the Dutch do, as a left wing forward, or will he be playing down the middle like he has done for most of his Liverpool career? But worst problems to have, I guess, and Gakpo has been the standout player from the Euros for me, certainly from a Liverpool perspective.
Reading between the lines, my gut feeling is he probably will be on the left. Like I'm not sure if you asked him, but in your breakout section with Arne Slot, it was about Darwin Núñez, wasn't it? And he said his role in the side.
I asked that one. Yeah.
You did ask that. That seemed to be, he was suggesting he's going to be down the middle as a striker.
Yeah, he didn't give much away, but he said he's spoken to him, and well, that was my question actually. You know what? You know, are you excited to work with a player of his potential, and you know, where do you see him? And he said he's spoken to him, and we spoke about his position, and it was very deliberately singular position that wasn't positioned. So yeah, he will have an idea of where he wants Núñez to play, and we think it's going to be down the middle. So that, you know, like you say, presents opportunities for Gakpo.
And then I asked him in the open section about Trent and Gakpo. And while he didn't want to give it anything away, he did say he had ideas in mind for both players. And my gut feeling of that was, well, Gakpo's on the left because that's what he did in Holland. That's where he tormented Slot's teams in the past. That's where Ruud van Nistelrooy's come out and said this is his best position. We've seen him do so well.
Dirk Kuyt as well.
Yeah, Dirk Kuyt as well. It just seems it's all pushing in that way. And then when you throw in the uncertainty over Luis Diaz. I'm not sure if we've got Copa America on the agenda, but he scored a superb goal this weekend as well. But it just seems to be pointing towards the front three of Salah, Núñez and Gakpo as your first choice at the start of next season. But then when you've got two of them playing catch-up after international tournaments, it is everyone free-for-all, go and make those places your own.
But it's good to have the options, isn't it? You know, we know Liverpool have 5 going into 3. I think I've said it before, they could do with a 6 now with the return of the Champions League. But it's great to have the options. And you know, we spoke about it loads last season about, you know, if you keep 3 of them quiet, the other 2 can come off the bench and win games for Liverpool when the others are having a little bit of an off day. And between them all, I think they scored 90-odd goals, all 5 of them combined. So they're going to have to do something similar this season. We're not, at the moment, expecting any of them to leave, i.e. Diaz. Probably the only one with a slight question mark hanging over him, isn't he? But, yeah, I think it's a real good set of options there when everyone's fit and firing, and good problems to have for the new head coach.
So Theo, would you think that Gakpo is that registered starter on the left now? Because me personally, I'll probably keep Diaz there because he offers that element of unpredictability. But then Gakpo later in the game can run it. Obviously, obviously haven't stood next to him at the race, but he doesn't seem the quickest. Whereas if we bring him on, he can offer a different dimension and run at players. But with Diaz, there's obviously trickery and whatever he offers, that different sort of dimension.
I'd say that sort of favours him being a substitute, though. Not that we've ever seen him really in that role, because he's so explosive, because he's got that trickery. If you're against a tiring defence, he is the last person you want to come on and see doing those pieces. And with Gakpo, while he's not as quick, maybe not as direct, he's effective in that penalty area, or just cutting in from the left. He's got a great shot on him. He's got a good pass as well. He's got more in the final third in terms of that final ball. That sort of seems to favour the start for me. And it's not as though you need to keep him in reserve to have a goal scorer off the bench, because realistically, the best goal scorer they've got is Jota, and he's going to be the one who's going to be that substitute option, the one you can put anywhere across the front three, and he's going to be good for a goal. It's down to form, isn't it? Like last season started, Gakpo was first choice. He was the one in form. Núñez made that shirt his own after he gets the Newcastle brace. When Gakpo gets injured against Tottenham, and the pecking order changes somewhat. We get to Christmas time and Jota's first choice. He's in the form of his life. But then he gets that injury against Brentford. It's always changing. It's always evolving. It's just, if you're playing well, you make that shirt your own. So if we base it on how last season ended going into the new season, Gakpo's first choice, Salah's first choice, and then it's like, who can take that final place? Diaz was the one playing best, but if you want Gakpo on the left, it's going to be Núñez. But then if Jota's come back earlier from the Euros and he does well in what you see in pre-season, he has that opportunity. And you can say that right across the team. Like, as it stands, Kwanzaa's first choice centre-back, for example, alongside Van Dijk, he'll have the full pre-season, whereas Konaté's not kicked a ball for France. It isn't going to be a case of slots come in, this is my 11. You're not going to see anything different from that. It's just go and impress in training, impress in the matches, and stake your claim to make this shirt your own.
Just the final one on this Euros, obviously Van Dijk's birthday today as well. There's been a lot of criticism about him from certain fractions of the Dutch media, and I read somewhere yesterday that he has made the most fouls in the tournament, which for me, it doesn't matter where it is. If it stops a counter-attack, I'll take a foul all day. But it's been a good tournament for him as well, where he obviously, someone said it's his first
Euros.
First Euros.
Missed the last with the ACL, didn't he?
Might even be his last if you think about the age he's coming to as well. And he obviously wants to go out on a high, and he's, by all accounts, he's one of the most liked members of that Holland squad as well.
Yeah, he is a leader, and I don't get why the Netherlands critics always come out and say he's not vocal enough, because we see him week in, week out for Liverpool, and even if he's not the one screaming the loudest, he's still very vocal, ordering the teammates around, and all of the centre-back partners have pretty much said they need to take that part of his game. They need to learn his leadership, because you just take it for granted at how good he is. It is different when you're playing Netherlands and maybe different setup, different style. But Liverpool know how good he is, and you can have all those critics from the Netherlands. It doesn't seem to faze him too much. It got on his back a little bit after the mistake in the Austria defeat, but then they've responded with a good couple of victories to get through to the semi-finals. And you're not going to remember, he played an Austrian onside, if he's the one who's silenced in England in midweek and then gets his hand on the trophy next weekend. He's just one of the best centre-backs ever. Maybe that's part of the reason why he's held to such a high level. And these Netherlands players who are really criticising him, you've got the likes of Marco van Basten, who have won the Euros, won Champions Leagues, but then you've got some who have fallen short as well, like your Rafa van der Vaarts and Wesley Sneijder's. They're good players, they were great players in their day, But what do they do on the international stage? They lost the World Cup final. Like, and they'll have the players before them being exactly as critical of them, saying you fell short where it matters. The Dutch are always that little bit more critical. They say exactly what they're thinking. So it's just part of the game. It's different to how we see it, isn't it? But then they could be saying the exact same stuff about the English pundits when you think how Gary Neville or whatever's criticising Trent or Roy Keane, like all these sorts. It's just how you perceive it, because we see them week in, week out compared to what they'll be in the Netherlands looking over at Virgil van Dijk.
Just going to say, I think it's a huge week for Van Dijk. I actually want the Dutch to win the Euros, and I said that before the ball was kicked, because I feel how good Van Dijk is as a player, the best centre-back I've ever seen at Liverpool. I feel like when you win an international tournament, certainly as a captain, you're standing in the world game sort of goes up a notch. And okay, he's done it at Liverpool. He's won Premier League, Champions Leagues, FA Cups, League Cups, Club World Cups. He's won everything, hasn't he, at Liverpool? But winning something with your country just takes you up, even a further notch. And the image of him lifting the Euros trophy as Holland captain, that would be massive, his legacy. And I'd like him to get there, because I just feel like he deserves to be sort of as vaunted as what I have in my own mind, really, just from watching him the last few years. So, it's a huge week for him. Just turned 33 today, is it? One of the biggest games of his career on Wednesday night. Certainly the biggest, I'd argue, that he's had for the Netherlands. I know they got to the Europa League Nations final, or the UEFA Nations final, rather, a few years back, but that's not the same as the European Championship, is it? Particularly one for a nation of Holland, who I think they've only won it once after he was at 88. So massive week for him, and I hope he does it, to be fair. I hope he goes on and wins the whole thing. Certainly
the best result for Liverpool if the Netherlands do it, because you look at France, Konaté's not playing. You look at England, Gomez isn't playing. Trent's getting the odd cameo here and there. Yeah, Gravenberch isn't playing, but Gakpo's been star of the tournament, as we've said. And if Netherlands go on to win it, getting clean sheets in a final or whatever, or even go to penalties, we know Van Dijk can take a good penalty. He's going to be right at the centre of that. It's like we say, if Uruguay win the Copa America, that's probably the best Liverpool result in terms of Nunes. You throw it at the Dutch as well.
And Gorst, just on Van Dijk, obviously segueing into Slot's press conference on Friday, he did mention speaking to him, and he spoke to in the club in-house one as well.
Yeah.
He obviously knows how important of a figure Van Dijk is. He obviously sees him on the international stage as well, and he obviously, he said it, like him and Richard Hughes have both said, they want to keep these players, and when you win that sort of thing, it just boosts you throughout the whole season, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if he comes back as a European Championship winner, a captain, springing a step, that'll be a huge boost for Liverpool's overall season, I'd imagine. Obviously, into the last year of his contract now, Slot sort of mentioned, I think one of the Dutch reporters asked him, did you feel his hunger to stay? And he said, yes, I did. So he's probably the one of the three, Alexander-Arnold and Salah, who I'm least concerned about at this stage. It does feel like he wants to stay, going off what we've heard from when we've spoke to him after games and stuff, and he seems relaxed and confident that an offer will come, but at the moment, or at least when he updated us last month, there wasn't an offer on the table, so we couldn't really say too much more. But Liverpool will want to keep their captain, of course, and he wants to stay, so I think that will get resolved, and it'll be a huge boost if it does arrive in time for the new season, especially if it comes on the back of him being a European Championship winner.
And Theo, just on obviously the news this weekend, rumours are that Thiago Alcantara is retiring, and obviously Adrian is he's said goodbye to Liverpool fans. And just starting off with Thiago, he's obviously, when a player on a pitch, he sort of brings like different kind of magic, and he sort of ran out of superlatives for whatever he produced on the pitch, didn't you?
Yeah, he was a great player to watch, wasn't he? Like, we always remember the FA Cup semi-final against Man City, the United, the 4-0 one, wasn't it, where he was absolutely superb. The Porto goal, there were so many great moments of magic, but at the same time, there wasn't enough, or they didn't get him to the status that he should have. Like, the Champions League final was the big one for me, where he limps off in the warm-up the day before, needs the pain-killing injections to even start the game in the first place, and he's only fit enough, like in that asterisk marks, he's only fit enough to start it because he's had the pain-killing injections. It's like,
there was the Carabao Cup as well, wasn't there?
He missed that completely because he got injured in the warm. So yeah, it's always that frustration there that you saw the glimpses, but it should have been so much more. But the body obviously wouldn't allow him to do that. Like the fact that he won an FA Cup. Isn't that the only one he really had the contribution on in terms of, because he missed the League Cup final? We've barely seen him the past 18 months. He said before, I think, in his career that the hip was always going to be an issue for him, and because of how he played the game, how he turned, how he passed, and that's ultimately what's been the case here. The fact that he's missed a year because of it. Then was it a muscle injury he gets? It's a very frustrating one for him. He can be the best player in the world, but if you're not fit, you're not going to see that. Players in the past, we've seen that at Liverpool, like Daniel Sturridge. He could have been one of their best strikers in Premier League history, but his body just let him down too many times, and it seems to have been the case for Thiago. But he's a very intelligent man, isn't he? Like, you wouldn't be surprised if he now turned out to be a great coach, following in like the Artetas, the Alonsos, the Pep Guardiolas. He certainly seemed to have that style about him. We'll see. But if he has definitely retired, wish him all the best. I just wish we could have seen a bit more of him on the playing pitch.
And Paul, there probably is. You probably think about it maybe 4 or 5 years' time. You sat around the table in the pub with your mates and go, "Oh, I remember Thiago." There is going to be that feeling of what ifs, isn't there, with Thiago? And obviously,
yeah. I always remember the second half of 21-22. He was unbelievable. He got himself fit on a consistent run, and like Theo mentions there, loads of high points. Manchester United. I remember that game, and Paul Scholes giving him standing ovation as he come off that night. Brilliant in that FA Cup semi-final against Man City. I think the first half of that game at Wembley was probably the zenith of the Jurgen Klopp era, really. Just for, absolutely baking down on Wembley. Fans were in unbelievable voice. They were 3-0 up against the biggest rivals at the time. It just felt like Liverpool could have conquered the world that day. And Thiago was front and centre of it all, spraying passes left, right and centre. Unbelievable player. Just a shame their injuries never really too far away from the topic, really, when we spoke about Thiago. He underwent surgery in May of last year to basically make sure that he was fit and ready for the season that had just gone, and he played 5 minutes, and that was in February. So sadly, he couldn't get fit, and Liverpool missed him last season. And it's just a shame, because he's an absolutely brilliant player, and one of the I'd argue probably actually the most high-profile sign that Liverpool have ever made, because the players that he brought to the club have become bigger stars while at Liverpool, whereas they brought him in as a Champions League winner. He'd only ever played for Barcelona and Bayern Munich. He was one of the most decorated players of the last 10 years at the time. He's obviously since added to that at Liverpool, and he walks away with about 27 major honours. So, and that's for club and country. So, what a career he's had, and it's just a shame that he couldn't have played more for Liverpool.
That high-profile nature that kind of worked against him. Like, you think of all the great players that Liverpool brought in and they've made, going back to Torres, Alonso, so many of the Klopp era. The fact that he came in already made, he had those high expectations, and let's be honest, he hasn't lived up to them.
Especially that Chelsea debut as well.
He was brought in to be the player that would turn one Premier League title into two Champions League title into two, and he hasn't managed to do that. So it's just that frustration there. Like, Liverpool stepped away from their usual philosophy with transfers to bring him in.
Yeah.
So I don't want to say it's a gamble that didn't pay off, but you certainly expected more from it.
It was an opportunistic one, wasn't it? He had 1 year left on his contract. He wanted a fresh challenge. Liverpool viewed him as the best midfielder in Europe the previous season. And there's a lot of things that tick some boxes, and it felt like it was a bit of a relatively cut-price gamble, didn't it, for a player with a massive reputation. And we saw why when he was at his best at Liverpool, but we just didn't see it often enough. And the first alarm bells for me were very early on, because he got that injury in the 2-2 derby, didn't he, at Goodison Park, and he was out.
That was tackle, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Richarlison. Who, I think did he get sent off for it, and he was never. He didn't play for 3 months after that, and then I think he got COVID during that time, and then he's playing.
Did he get COVID twice? Because he had the debut, got COVID, then came back.
I think so. Yeah. From what I can remember, I remember he played a massive role in Liverpool finishing in the top three at the end of that season. Got himself fit, and put in some really, good performances against the likes of West Brom and Burnley, and Liverpool picked up some vital wins. But yeah, just struggled with injury. I think I was looking at it yesterday. I think he missed over 140 games for Liverpool across the 4 years. Didn't make it to 100, so he's played less than 25 a season there. And yeah, it's just a real shame. But what a player!
Obviously, Adrian's another one who's leaving Liverpool. Reportedly offered new terms to sign on and extend his contract, because he's a popular member of that goalkeeping three.
No reported about it. The club confirmed it.
Not the club confirmed. He got offered a new deal. But with him leaving, obviously quite polarising in the sense where it was like some you think of some of the performances, but also some of the negative performances, like the Atletico Madrids. But what were your thoughts on obviously deciding to extend that contract, or at least trying?
It made sense, vital sort of steady hand behind the scenes, keeping levels and training up. Hugely experienced goalkeeper with over 200 Premier League games of experience. I could see why Liverpool thought it was a bit of a low-cost, low-maintenance deal, and he's decided not to take them up on it, and he's off to back to Real Betis by the looks of it. And fair play to him. His heroics for the Super Cup in Istanbul was huge for anyone who was at Vodafone Park that night. It was a brilliant. It was only the Super Cup, but what a night it was for those who were there. Played a huge role in Liverpool winning the Premier League, to be fair, when he got thrust into the limelight after Alisson got injured in the
That was your first trophy in the
first
club,
game of
wasn't
the
it?
season. Yeah. So I think Liverpool won all the games except for
Like 13 out of 15, wasn't it?
they drew with United. I'm not sure whether that was Alisson back in goal for that one, but he certainly played his part in that season. Premier League winners' medal, fully deserved, and as a sort of third choice goalkeeper, I thought he was absolutely fine. So yeah, Liverpool won't be sort of looking to bring in another experienced keeper on the back of it. Looks like they're going to be promoting Vítězslav Jaros into the third choice spot. Grievin Keller's future's still up for debate, isn't it? We'll see what happens with him in the coming weeks. A lot of moving parts in that goalkeeper department at the moment, but crucially, Liverpool still have Alisson Becker, who many would argue was the world's best.
ITV4 played a great tribute to him last night. They had Rocky 2 on. But yeah,
Still being done as well.
he was a good servant, wasn't he? He played a lot of game time in that first season. He was vital to win the Premier League, and he just wasn't Alisson quality, he wasn't Keller quality. But realistically, Liverpool have been very lucky to get a keeper of Keller's quality coming through the academy to deputise, and he came in right on the eve of the season and he delivered. Like usually, an experienced third choice, it's going to be a difficult job. He was a very popular player in that squad as well. And 37, we've just seen him get his coaching badges, haven't we? In the last couple of months, he was helping coaching a little bit behind the scenes as well. He was a vital part of that group with his experience as well, and he will be missed. I know there were always the groans if you saw him in the starting 11. There were always the moans about him taking up a foreign space in that squad as well, where the transfer-hungry hordes will say, sack him off, get someone else
Hordes, that was, wasn't it? Transfer-hungry hordes.
What did I say?
No, that's just clarifying. You did say hordes.
You did say hordes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he was a good servant for the club, and just did his job really well. And if he goes back, well, he will go back to Spain. Hopefully he gets a few minutes out there as well. Finish on a high with Real Betis. And it'll be interesting to see what does happen now with Jaros coming in, because obviously he's complete opposite end of his career, 22. Like if you've convinced him be third choice, that's still, you're only getting him there for 1-2 years. Like that suggests there is going to be a promotion up to second choice, or he does move on. You're looking again. It would have certainly been beneficial for Liverpool to keep Adrian in terms of all the changes we've seen behind the scenes this season with the coaches, but you just got to make the best of it, and seems to be what they're doing with someone from within the ranks.
Yeah, good luck to him, because, like we say, he doesn't really play much for the last couple of years, as his last appearance was the Community Shield 2 years ago.
He wins a trophy on his first start, wins a trophy on his last start. How many Liverpool players can say that?
Yeah, well, there you go, yeah. Good luck to him.
And obviously, Theo mentioned it there, Gorst. It frees up one of them homegrown or non-homegrown places, which they're like gold dust in this transfer market, aren't they?
Yeah, I guess so. Do you know what? I never really put too much stock in this sort of stuff. It's very much football admin, which I think Theo knows a lot more of than me. But yeah, I guess so. This homegrown quota, the Liverpool aren't going to be targeting players just because they're homegrown, but certainly if they are, and then it ticks another box, i.e. Anthony Gordon. But yeah, I suppose it does free up another homegrown slot.
I've not fully worked out the numbers yet because it's going to be a bit of a deep dive, but it's looking a lot healthier this year because there's a number of those youth players that now count towards the quota, like a Jaros. I think Krantz is still too young, but there's like a few that have stepped up to take
Connor
up.
Bradley,
he's still too young, I think. But like Owen Beck and Tyler Morton, if they stay, they take spaces. And when you've seen Thiago go, Matip go, Adrian go, there's a fair few overseas places to play with as well. So
Fabio Carvalho, he'd be homegrown, wouldn't he?
Yeah, he's homegrown. He'd take up one. He's of age now. So, yeah, they don't necessarily need the homegrown players now. And there's actually space in the squad to sign players. But as we're not really expecting loads until end of July, start of August, it's going to be a lot of spinning plates, and there was players that can move on.
Sorry, space on the wage bill as well. When you think
Yeah.
of Thiago's left, he was one of the highest earners just
Matip
behind
as well.
sort of Van Dijk and Salah level. Matip, like you say, yeah. Adrian wouldn't have been on huge money, but it's still a senior professional who would have been earning X amount. So, yeah, I think there's enough sort of jiggery-pokery on the wage bill there for Liverpool to not have any real issues when they go in the recruitment drive in the coming weeks and dare we say months.
I enjoyed that jiggery-pokery. I've never heard that before. We'll go back onto Slot's press conference on Friday, and obviously if you haven't listened to the audio version, Paul and Theo were pitch side or training centre
On location,
side.
yeah,
On
in the
location in the
car
car. There's some sound effects in there if you haven't heard them, available on our Spotify.
It was so hot in that car at the start of the podcast.
So I don't want to cover too much ground what was covered on Friday, but someone's commented here, like, they thought Slot was very composed. Obviously, he's not Klopp, very reassuring.
Yeah.
Did Hughes learn anything new from a start with you, Paul?
I think that's spot on, yeah. He didn't do the whole classic sound bites that Klopp would always give you. You know, you listen to Klopp and he'd say something and you'd sort of think, how's he managed to sum up an entire situation there in just like a very succinct sentence? And he was very good at that, wasn't he? But Slot's got his own way. He seems very confident. His English is really good, which is a good start. Confident, self-assured. Speaking to people around the place on the day and since, they've all described him as sort of down to earth. Seems like a very likeable person, and he come across well. We had the chance to speak to him, didn't we? And yeah, he looks like he's going to be a good fit. He's just come in with minimum fuss so far, and I guess that's kind of what you're hoping for when you're following such a iconic figure in Jurgen Klopp. You just want to get your head down and crack on and just go about your business.
Theo, anything to add?
Yeah, he was just confident. He did what he needed to do. Like when Klopp came in, it was about awakening the sleeping giant, whereas for Slot, it's just keeping that train going, isn't it? And that's a saying I think Klopp's used a few times himself. Yeah, he said the right things. There weren't really any takeaway quotes that I think we'll be using in pieces for years to come, but it was still a really convincing display from him. He answered what he was asked really well, and he was in control as well. It was just impressive seeing Richard Hughes alongside him too. Like we covered this on the podcast as well, but it certainly presents the two of them as a double act rather than this is the manager and then you've got the director behind the scenes. It's obviously very new to English audiences, British football, but it's not in Holland, for example, so it's something that Slot's used to. So it'll certainly be interesting to see how that develops going forward when they're working together on new signings, player contracts, everything together. Slot's obviously, his main focus is the training pitch, and we're seeing glimpses of that this weekend. He's getting right into the thick of the action. It's a promising start. Just got to wait a few weeks until he actually gets the bulk of his squad back together.
It's a good point you make, because obviously when you've watched the training videos of like months and years gone by, you see like Pep Linders, he's obviously at the forefront doing all the putting the cones on the pitch essentially, and when you see Slot, you can calling out obviously Curtis Jones or praising Fabio Carvalho, he's very much front and centre, and he is very much living up to that head coach title, which what he says he wants to do is develop the players.
Yeah, they've introduced a new sort of pre-season fitness programme as well, rather than the dreaded lactate test, which they did for years. James Milner was the one who always won, and Mo Salah took the crown last year. It's a different way of working now. They do a 6-minute run, which is what it says. They basically run for 6 minutes flat and then see how much ground they've covered. I think they're looking for somewhere between 1.5 and 2 kilometres during that run. And I think I saw a clip of Kwanzaa and Vandenberg and Conor Bradley, I think, after doing it, and they all looked absolutely exhausted. But Slot was telling them, go all out. That this is how you get fit for pre-season and under me, and you've got to give it your all. And didn't look like something I'd like to be undertaking, but it's a new way of working. And Ruben Peters was there, wasn't he? The new performance coach, and Conor Murtagh, the fitness coach as well. So they're certainly getting put through the paces.
And just on the Richard Hughes comments, obviously he was asked about the transfers, and he's just to quote him, he says, "I see a quiet July and then a crescendo in August." And do you feel like that could play two different ways? Obviously, it's good that Slot can get a first look at all the players, the youth players, but then if you're not getting all your players back to the end of the pre-season tour, which is the beginning of August maybe, then aren't you leaving yourself a bit short?
Yeah, I mean, that quote wasn't necessarily Liverpool specific. I think it was like more of a general trend what his prediction would be for the window because of PSR stuff, and he sort of said he thinks he sees a scenario where August is going to be a bit busier than July, and from Liverpool's perspective that might be the case because all the indications are the Slot wants to get a look at his players before he makes the decision either way, and there's merit in that school of thought. It makes sense from a sort of football point of view, but I wonder, I think I mentioned it to you, Theo, where how long do you give that before you get a good look at your players? Because they're all, how many of them are away now at the Euros and the Copa America?
It's 11, isn't it? Oh no, 2 have just come back, not just come back.
There's 9 who were still involved, aren't there? And then you've got Jota and Andy Robertson as a Bosley will probably be joining up with them this week. But Jota and Alisson, when are they going to join up? At some point, you might have to take the plunge and say, well, we need a midfielder, we need a centre-back, we need whatever it is, because otherwise you're risking waiting until August to get a good look, and then suddenly you decide, oh, we need 2 or 3, yeah, and prices have gone up, options are few and far between, and you run the risk of looking to add to your squad when the season's already started, which is never really ideal. So I can see why that's a bit of a nice ideology of getting a look at everyone, but it doesn't necessarily work 100% in practice, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
I imagine they have to be flexible, don't they? Like when Slot did his in-house media interview, he said he hadn't spoken to the internationals apart from Van Dijk, but we've since learnt then that he has spoken to Nunes about his role in the side. So he has spoken to some of the players. He'd just rather do most of it in person, face to face, because you realistically, a new manager coming in, you want them all in your office going, right, what do you want? What do you see your future at this club? Are you part of this? Are you going to buy into what we want? Or do you want to move on? Do you want first team football elsewhere? Like Kelleher could say he wants to be a first choice. Vandenberg, we've already had those whispers that he wants out. So then you get that feel of what you need from who you've already got within your ranks. And then you're seeing him in training. You see the youngsters. It's more the youngsters than the first team players. Like he's watched all the training sessions. He's watched all the matches. He's got his own opinions about Gakpo, Trent Alexander-Arnold, etc., etc., etc. But it's looking at a Tyler Morton going, is he a midfield option or do we need to go and sign one? Fabio Carvalho, is he an option? It's these players, and then making your decisions from there. Already promoted one player in Jaros, but it's about getting those conversations in, seeing it and piecing it all together. It's just if you're waiting until August to get those players back, you are playing catch up a little bit, and that is a concern. But we said it was a concern last year as well when they started the season without older midfielder. They got Endo in, it took them a couple of months to get up to speed, but it didn't exactly hurt them too much in the long run. Maybe if they had got someone at the start of the month, they end up challenging for the title all the way in, but they did respectably enough. And if he had the same season this year, it's not exactly a bad thing, is it?
Well, Gravenberch signs deadline day, doesn't he? Which is very unlike Liverpool.
Yeah.
Particularly as he's been a long-standing target as well. I think they were trying to get him as far back as the April, but I guess his situation was, coloured by the fact that he was Bayern Munich player and he wasn't sure whether they had long-term plans for him or whatever else. Normally, when Liverpool are looking to bring in a player, they're dealing with the club who aren't at their level, aren't they? So I guess there was a little bit of a caveat to that one. Endo as well, we know what happened there with Lavia and Caicedo, and then he definitely pivoted. But McAllister and Szoboszlai were signed before the end of June, weren't they? McAllister basically been earmarked well before the start of, or rather the end of the season. So
as soon as he was lifting that World Cup trophy, pretty much,
yeah.
It?
So in an ideal world, that's how you like to get your squad together for the summer before pre-season, early as you can. But like we say, there's plenty of moving parts behind the scenes, so it doesn't always work out like that. But I agree with you. I think it would be a little bit of a concern to just put a blanket ban on incomings until you get a look at everyone in the squad, because you might not get too much of a chance to do that before the proper stuff begins.
And even on the other side of the coin, where you got these young players who it's their chance to shine before all of superstars and all the big name players come back, and that's when he sort of slowly sort of drip back into the youth ranks. So it's a good chance for the likes of Trey Ione and Marinallo to sort of step up and show what they've got, especially when it does get to the Carabao Cup and the early rounds of the FA Cup.
Yeah, there's loads of them there at the moment, isn't there? We've seen them training over the weekend. Fabio Carvalho's back there, Sepp Vandenberg, obviously different sorts of situations there. I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Carvalho, because it's a totally new regime where does he play? What's his best position? Do Liverpool want to keep him? Do you want to sell him? I guess at the moment there's no decision because Slot, Freudian slip there. Slot wants to get a real look at him. So his situation is particularly interesting for me. And then you've got Nat Phillips. We know the club are looking to sell him, aren't they, and bring in some money. But Cons is the only centre-back there at the moment, the only senior centre-back apart from him. So might he be needed to at least play a couple of friendlies? So
be a US tour.
Yeah. So there's a lot to look at, really, and loads of young players who are chomping at the bit.
What I like about it is you look at those youth players, and so many of them are good enough to play for the Liverpool first team. You can see them having squad roles, being first team players in years to come. Whereas the last time Liverpool were in this situation where they had so many players away on international duty and a new manager, we're talking when Brendan Rodgers took over in 2012-13. And you go through the young players there who were flying out to the United States, you're going to see a lot of players who weren't good enough to play for Liverpool, who probably didn't play again after that tour, or maybe got a couple of Europa League qualifier appearances. And it was just, we are filling gaps here, we're waiting for the players to come back. Whereas these players here, they are good enough to stake the claim. We've seen that last season, we've seen that throughout Klopp's reign, and Slot said if they're good enough, they're old enough, that is going to continue going forward. So it is just keeping that door open to the academy and the players coming through. It's an exciting time because there isn't necessarily going to be the same opportunities this year without the Europa League. So you really are fighting to be part of that squad or for a good loan move.
And Paul, obviously this week, I think it's now the fourth day back, maybe three if they have the day off on Sunday. What can we expect from this week? Obviously, there'll be more players come back. You mentioned Szoboszlai and Robertson could be back this week. Who else could we see back this week?
No, we won't see Robertson and Szoboszlai for a couple of weeks. Yeah, they've got 3 weeks off after the end of the Euros group stages. So, we think they're going to meet up with them for the tour of the States. But there's not going to be too many coming back, really. Mo Salah is back this week. We should probably see some social media footage of him at some point this week when the LFC TV cameras are permitted in to get it all on footage as they have been over the weekend. But other than that, it's as you were. The likes of Curtis Jones are there, aren't they? Kostas Tsimikas, Carvalho, like we mentioned, Nat Phillips,
Elliott.
Harvey Elliott is another first teamer, isn't he? And Kelleher's there. So there's enough there for Slot to get a look at players who perhaps will have a future with him and he will want to get a look at. But most of the big guns, aren't they, are still waiting to come back. And that goes back to what we were saying just shortly about leaving it too late before you make a decision on what you want to do in terms of transfer dealings, really.
And Theo, it's sort of at that stage of the season now, isn't it, where the pre-season, where not much is happening and you sort of just wonder what next. And like you said, it's just one of them things where you're just waiting for that first game.
Yeah, could be waiting a while. Normally you have the rest of your pre-season scheduled by now, but it seems Liverpool are going to do behind closed doors before they go to the States, which we covered this in the car park on Friday. It can work both ways, really. It can be a good thing and a bad thing. Like, it's bad in terms of you're waiting that little bit longer to get your first glimpses of the new regime, but then it's good for Liverpool if they can keep it secret and in-house because it makes them that unknown quantity. Like, they can iron out all the issues you're going to have with the new manager coming in, waiting for the players to come back, and then ready to go in the States. Hopefully they do feed us a little bit from matches or have a couple of transfers or something to talk about in the weeks ahead. But even if it is a quiet July, it's going to be a really fascinating and busy August, isn't it? When you've got all those internationals coming back, the season's about to start, they're going to strengthen the squad. They've said they're going to strengthen the squad. And it's a clean slate for every single one of those players. So it's go and stake your claim. Are you going to be part of the Slot era, or is it best for you to move on? It's just going to be fascinating to watch from afar because we haven't had this situation for the best part of a decade. The new manager coming in and everything starting from scratch.
And of course, just finally before we dust down, it's obviously been a quiet week since obviously everything with Anthony Gordon, and then this afternoon has been the Trabzonspor bid rejected supposedly for Nat Phillips. What's on the ground? What do we know
in terms of
what's going on?
Just anything.
Yeah.
I mean, Liverpool are always getting linked to players, aren't they? But the sporting director said on Friday that they're going to be opportunistic, which I suppose Anthony Gordon falls into the category of, because he was offered to Liverpool by Newcastle and they obviously admired the player. He took a look and then realised that we've probably got a few too many already on the books on that left side, but that was an opportunity that presented itself. You'd argue that Lenny Yoro was similar, the Lille defender who they're certainly interested in, but they think is going to be going to Real Madrid. They've sort of made it known that, Real Madrid don't make their move, and Lille are sort of determined to cash in as he's in the final year of his contract. That Liverpool can be a high calibre alternative to Real Madrid if needed. So I guess that again falls under that remit as well. So they will be looking. We're seeing players linked all the time, aren't we? Ryan Aït-Nouri is the latest one at Wolves at left back. How much would he cost? I can see him ticking loads of boxes, but then, are they going to be spending X amount of money on a player who might not necessarily be first choice left back for a couple of years while Andy Robertson's still there? But yeah, loads of stuff going on behind the scenes, but they are keeping the powder dry at the moment, aren't they?
And Theo, just part and comment from you, and where should Liverpool strengthen as one of the first bits of business?
Can't wait until the players come back so we see who's staying, who's going. We said on this podcast before that I'd like to see him sign a forward, I'd like to see him sign a number 6, I'd like to see him sign a centre-back, and you'd imagine there is going to be another goalkeeper there as well, because it would be a massive surprise if Keller is still part of that squad. Like, he deserves to go out and play. He deserves to go and be a first choice somewhere. But we've said that about Nat Phillips for a number of years, so it's always unpredictable, isn't it? You've got to have the right offer come forward. And if you're Liverpool, it's not a case of we just want Keller off the books, we're going to accept a loan bid at the end of the month. You'll rather have him as your number 2 if no one does come forward for it. So it's just observing it all from a distance. But it's what makes it interesting. I've just gone through and said goalkeeper, defence, midfield, attack. That's the whole team, isn't it? So that's why it's going to be a really interesting 6 weeks, 8 weeks with the transfer window, because once they have a look at all these youngsters, they have a look at the whole squad, literally anything could be strengthened here.
That's all we have time for this week's, or this Monday's Blood Red podcast. Once again, thanks to our sponsors, NordVPN. Make sure you click our link, go to our YouTube channel or on Facebook Live. It's nordvpn.com/bloodred to get 4 months extra off your 2-year plan free. I've been Stephen Killen, joined by Paul Gorst and Theo Squires. Make sure you like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the week.